There's no question, old houses are filled with character. Keep away from 5-minute trends, keep true to the house, and then consider yourself a steward of it in a greater timeline.
My guests today are Elizabeth and Ethan Finkelstein, the couple behind Cheap Old Houses. You may have seen them on HGTV, or if you've fallen down the rabbit hole of their Instagram feed, you know the dream they're selling. Beautiful old historic homes with great bones at prices that actually make sense. Welcome back to Own It. I'm your host, Angi Hicks, co-founder of Angi. On this show, we talk about what it really takes to own your home without it owning you. Buying a cheap old house isn't just a fun side project. It's actually a big financial decision and a lifestyle decision. It can also be a structural decision too. Elizabeth and Ethan will walk us through how to assess one of these properties, how to finance it, and then also whether you should pick up that paintbrush yourself or whether you should leave it to a pro. What I really liked about this conversation was how they taught us to think differently about what homeownership can look like. Elizabeth, Ethan, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to chat with you. I would love to just start out with how you all got started with cheap old houses. What was your inspiration and what led you to building cheap old houses?
It's kind of the only thing we can do. I know that sounds crazy. I do really believe that we're all put on this earth to do something. And I think we feel very much that it's in our blood. And I guess it took us a little while to find that thing, although old houses have been in our lives forever. But, for us, it was really a combination of feeling like acquiring a house is a pipe dream for so many people and loving old homes, having grown up in them, working with them. I have a master's degree in historic preservation. And just understanding that there is so much housing stock out there if you're willing to think outside the box. So it was sort of our sort of house hack solution to a problem.
We were posting old houses for sale at all price points on social media a little over 10 years ago, maybe like 15 years ago now.
Oh, gosh.
Elizabeth was posting these houses, these cheap houses that she found on Country Living magazine. And then we started our own blog on Circa Old Houses. And it was a fan favorite every single week. And it went viral every single week, these cheap old houses. And we were at the same time looking for a cheap old house for ourselves to fix up and not flip per se, but to live in. And it was sort of just this pipe dream. We had always wanted this for ourselves. And I think the moment that we knew we hit something was when New York Magazine wrote about us about 4 years after we posted these cheap old houses. And they were a 4 or 5 page essay on cheap old houses and this beautiful thing that people buying these things. And they said, would you change your life for a cheap old house that you saw on the internet? And that was the moment that hit us where we were like, wow, like, people are doing this. We're not just posting this on the internet. People are home shopping on our Instagram feed.
So I know I might hit on a sore point, but I'm going to go right to the heart of this. So Elizabeth, I know that you get really upset when people say that old houses are money pits. Tell me why.
Angi, we've talked about this before. I know that you and I have had many a conversation about old houses being money pits. I would say this. All houses need maintenance. New houses need maintenance. Old houses need maintenance. I would rather work on a house that has materials that I can fix versus new materials, aluminum, vinyl, plastic, things that you can't repair and that have to go in a landfill. I think the notion that old houses require more has a lot of nuance and isn't necessarily true. I know plenty of new houses that are built poorly, terribly, went up very quickly with cheap materials that might not need a ton of maintenance now, but in 10 years, I don't want to be the owner of that house.
Are there things when you think about, kind of, if you're thinking about going in and saying, hey, I want to own an old house, like, what do you need to assess in yourself, whether you're going to be a good old house owner? Because I think some people find it intimidating, quite honestly, right? Because they're just like, oh, this is a project. This is a labor of love. What makes me a good old house person?
I think you have to have the love. I think just from a very superficial standpoint, I like to say, are you the kind of person that thinks, I want to go to the beach every weekend? Or are you the kind of person that's like, wow, I can't wait till the weekend hits. I have a lot of projects I want to work on. I think there are two kinds of people. And if you're in the right camp there, that's a starting point.
I think that's the real thing is if you enjoy the projects and you enjoy working on your house and, if you have young kids, you're home anyway. It depends on your lifestyle and where you are in your life and your season of life. But if you are a beach person, or if someone who likes to fish, hopefully you have a stream in your backyard or the beach outside. But
So for someone who's listening who might be considering buying an older house, who doesn't know if it's worth investing in, what's the first thing you would tell them?
I would look at the structure itself. I think you have to make sure that the structure is in good condition. It's very easy to fall in love, speaking from experience, with all the pretty stuff. There's no question. Old houses are filled with character. It's what makes them pop on Instagram. It's what makes us successful. People love it. It taps into sort of this nostalgia and beauty, and they love that. It's very easy to fall in love with that. And I think if you're looking at a house, you have to understand that if what you're buying can fit into your lifestyle, either you have to have enough money to fix it if it needs extreme repairs, or you have to be handy and crafty and have the time to be able to do that. And it also depends on what the house needs. So if the house has active water issues, you need to be able to seal them up. If the foundation requires, heavy lifting, that's something that you can consider. If there are just aesthetic problems and you have a lot of patience and you can work on your house over time, that's a great buy. I think also if you're buying, this is an age-old adage, but if you're buying the worst house on the best block, that's going to go far for you. So there are a lot of factors to consider. I don't think this is a one-size-fits-all answer.
All houses are going to take some investment. I think looking at the cheap or affordable price or cheapest house on the block is always sort of a good nod to if you can get a little bit of value out of it. So, we don't like to look at houses as investments personally, but obviously that's a huge part of it in terms of home ownership and trying to acquire, that a wealth and have that house gain for you. So I think the bones matter a lot. I think, buying the worst house on the block can sometimes work as long as you're smart with the maintenance and the repairs.
I will say too, there is emotional investment. I think this is a place you're going to be in every day of your life. And you need to love it. And there are certainly times when we have worked on old houses where we're probably not going to get back what we put into it, but we love the thing we put in, and it's our house. And if you think of houses just as, sticks and stones and sort of just materials that are very transactional, right, you're going to have a different approach to what you think of investment as being.
Sometimes it is hard to define where kind of your financial head stops and your emotional heart comes in and plays in this. When you're talking to people that are redoing houses, like how do they think about that? Because it is, honestly, it's like there's an element of how much enjoyment you get out of the home while you're living in it.
I think it's a few different factors. We are on the barometer scale. We know we're like 70% emotional and 30% financial focused. I think you have to know
which one of us are you talking about?
Well, we both play our parts.
So I make a great team.
and there's a part to that 70. Maybe I'm 50%, and Elizabeth is 20, and or she's 50% emotional. But I think you try to find that balance and find out where you are on the barometer, especially when you're buying that house. And then things also do change. If you're in the house for 5-10 years, a lot of stuff is going to change. And if you're deciding to stay or if you're deciding to go. So I think the seasonality of just living there and focusing on kind of how you live there and if you're going to stick it for the long term.
You both have seen so many of these old houses. What are features you're like, hey, this one's got real potential because of X?
Yeah, I think anytime a house is in truly original state, I get very excited, and I know our audience does as well. When the original features are in the house, if a house settles over time, its original windows settle with it. They're shaped like the house, the features that are in it. And they say, right, there are no right angles in old houses. But the things that were there in the beginning have shifted and formed with the house so that nothing will fit better than the original features in a house. So we always try to encourage people, if you're buying a house, to keep those bones, anything affixed to the house, save as much of that as you possibly can. Right. And then your own personal stuff in the house that's movable, have fun with that. Express yourself. If it doesn't go with the era of the house, but you love it, that's not as important to us. But you are not the only person that's going to live in that house. And fortunately, the people before you living there didn't muck it up before you. And that's why you have this beautiful, thing. So we say, keep away from 5-minute trends, keep true to the house, and then consider yourself a steward of it in a greater timeline.
Sometimes you can find these little gems with some modern LVL flooring over, and then you have the old wood floors underneath. So that's something easy you can kind of peek in the corner, or maybe you have carpets. So that's a really fun one to have old original flooring in the house. I think old fireplaces, old mantles, obviously the newel posts when you walk in, original windows we like, but some people might want that more modern window. But I think a lot of these houses you're coming in and potentially hasn't been updating of plumbing, electrical, sometimes HVAC systems. So those are the core things, and insulation. I think it depends on if these houses have had some of that updating and some of that love. So those are the things that, those are the financial, non-emotional side of things that if they have been updated, that's amazing.
I'm a big fan of fireplaces. Like, I think those can make a house. I have one that I like a lot in my house, and I'm just like, if we change the house, I think I would reconfigure around it.
So in our fixer-upper that we bought for $70,000, I think most people design their beach home. We're designing our winter home where we have 7 fireplaces in this place, and we are designing it around the fireplaces because we love that hygge sort of, very, very warm, cozy. We live in the Northeast. It's very cold. It was really cold this last year. And, I think we like to plan around the fireplace.
Fireplaces are one of those things that in all the advancements and all the things we've done in homes, fireplaces are kind of the same as they've been, 300 years ago. It's just fire heating your house. And I think that people love how real that feels. And there is a reason why you and us and we always want to kind of gather around that.
I feel like it kind of helps to replace the phone in your hand, and you're like, I don't need that. I can cozy up with a book and get back to real life. I think Gen Z is coming into this where they want real experiences.
Okay, we want to actually have something that we can feel. Right. So Ethan, you said, you bought your house for $70,000, which I could, that is like, wow, to buy a house for $70,000. But walk us through what the budget looks like. When we're looking at a house that we see on your Instagram and it's, $70,000, how should I be thinking about that as far as like over the first couple of years that I'm owning it? Some of those $70,000 ones might be livable, some may not. What's the path?
Well, interestingly, Ethan, if you could talk to, we have a really good example of this because we just finished a house for Ethan's mom that we bought for $27,000, and we just wrapped that project. So we have all the numbers. And so I think that for us too, that was an interesting test case because it was really full circle for us in talking about that.
So for us, that house, this was a soup to nuts house. This is it needed everything. So I have a perfect budget. It's a 2,400 square foot house, 3 bedrooms. It's sort of your average home from the 1880s, 1890s. We bought it for $27,000. And we worked on it for about a year and a half. And the first phase for us was really structural, foundational, and systems. So we needed to get the basement up and running. We need the floor joists to be up and running. Many of the floor joists on the first floor were not good. This is a very high level high water table area. So there's a lot of rot that kind of started to come up. But the old bones, the main sticks were all in great working order. So we spent $50,000 on all structural and leveling systems, and then some exterior painting. So that was where we landed for some concrete work, basement leveling work, and putting our basement joists in. Then the next 50, I would say, was in systems, plumbing, electrical, HVAC. So HVAC is about 15, 20, and then you have electrical, 10 to 15 for whole house wiring, and then plumbing about 10 to 15 as well. So just in terms of looking at those. And then we're talking drywall, trim, millwork, paint, and that's the last 50. So we spent $150,000 on one of these soup to nuts projects. I hope someone out there buys a house that's cheaper and has more things than we had in this home so they could be a lot more advantaged in terms of their budget. Obviously, you can spend much more. Our $70,000 house is a personal pet project of ours, so we're doing a lot of things like these 7 fireplaces that no one needs in their house. But we are doing it, so it's a little bit of a specialized project that
we plan to be there forever and ever and ever. So it's for sure something that we're investing.
You're doing it for your life, not for not for others.
But what's amazing, I'll say, in terms of the financial component for my mom and her setup is that, we got a construction loan to get this $150,000, and we're paying 6.5% on it, and that's equals to about $1,100 a month. And we got into the housing game with that house by paying it $27,000 and paying it off right away.
Right.
So we didn't have a mortgage on the home per se, but we did have a mortgage on the construction. And so we're going to be stuck in this for 5 years, paying this $1,100. But if we wanted to bring it to a 30-year mortgage, we could get the payments down to like $600-700 a month, which is wicked affordable for my mom.
Yeah.
And just, I think, a solution for folks who are looking for affordable housing just all around the country. We have these houses that are really all around the country. And I think this is a really fun solution, tool, capability, but it's been a fun case study and test for us.
Do you feel like you have to be a DIYer to tackle an old house, or is this something that someone that is going to hire it out, or do you get your finances upside down if you don't have a knack for kind of hanging drywall and things like that yourself?
I think you need to prioritize. So I think you need to know what your skill level is, and you need to know what your bank account looks like and parse it out. So I absolutely do not think you need to be a DIYer, and I would suggest not DIYing things that might burn your house down. So I say that jokingly, but one of the things that often it's not the old house that's the problem. It's the thing that the guy did in 1984 where he connected something wrong in a new part that messed up the old bones of the house. So I do think DIY can be as detrimental as it can be great. And it can be very great if you find yourself handy and you like doing it and you want to learn the things. We have people in our Cheap Old Houses community that have figured out how to DIY everything, and they do not come from contractor backgrounds. So I do think it's possible. But we don't feel any bias one way or another. I think it's specific to your case. And if you can afford to pay an expert, by all means, pay that expert to come in and do it right.
I think regardless, you're going to want to be involved because you're going to want to do some paint. Might want to do some stripping. You might want to do something and find out where your place is in it. But so I think just not shying away, because there's going to be times where your purse strings are a little tight, and then you're going to want to spend more on something and get it moving fast because you're busy. My
takeaway from this is be super honest with yourself about whether you can DIY. This is not a time to kind of stretch your truth, right? If you're in over your head, hire a pro. And then also, it's a great time to be curious. It's a great time to be curious about what they're doing. You should invest in time with that contractor you're hiring so that you can pick up some tidbits along the way.
Oh, yeah. Homeownership is such a journey, and it's like raising a kid. You keep learning as you go. There's no manual per se.
There is no manual. That's exactly right. I tell people that there is no manual for owning a house and maintaining it. I lived 20 years ago in a 1920s house. I would tell people, I was like, that was my favorite house. But we ended up moving, to the suburbs, to a newer house when I had my second child, because we didn't have enough space. I don't know that I'm alone in this, right? That the old houses, kind of their structure. So, people like bigger bathrooms. People like bigger closets. So what's your take, whether you invest in a larger bathroom or a larger closet in a house, or does that cross the line of staying true to the integrity of the house?
I do think it is okay to retrofit houses for basic modern needs. There are things that some old houses just don't have, but I think you can do it sensitively. I don't think that adding a closet to a house necessarily means completely destroying the character of the house. When you add that closet, look at the millwork in the house, look at the height of the other doors, try to align it, try to match it up. If you're just removing a corner of a room, it's okay. Old houses, in many cases, have been added to over time. And those are sometimes the quirks of them that we love the most, right? Like the pink 1920s bathroom in the 1850s house. It's really fun now because it's vintage, even though it might not be original to the house. I do think that you can do it sensitively. And I don't think the conversation should ever be, don't do anything, don't change anything in your old house, because that just creates a world in which people can't evolve. And I think people need to be educated and really think about how to retrofit these houses to modern living. For sure. Another thing that you didn't mention that are very different than how we used to live are kitchens. In Victorian houses, the kitchen was considered dirty, off limits. It was all the way in the back of the house. Now we have kitchens that everybody hangs out in the kitchen. It's in the center of the home. So how do you think about that? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to rip out whatever room is in the center of the house and put the kitchen there, but you can definitely think about ways to integrate the kitchen more into the home. And that's not a bad thing at all. The $70,000 house we own is from the late 1700s. It's quite old. And even back then, when they needed more space, they would just add on to the house. They didn't have a mentality that you keep the house frozen. They would add on. And so when we needed more space in that house, we did exactly what they would have done back then. So the idea of evolving a house is not wrong. And so it's for sure okay to do it, but always do it with the character of the house in mind.
Yeah. That's great. So you've built a community of nearly 3 million people that are following you, checking out your cheap old houses that you're posting. What are people most excited about, and what are they looking for right now?
I think people always get obsessed over the unique properties, something that is on a lake or a mill or a bank. These odd properties, these are always fan favorites, and they're always cheap over at Cheap Old Houses.
It's always a good idea to spend beneath your means. But I think, too, in this AI world, we see people really digging deeper into authenticity. And that is something that these houses have. These houses remind you of a past time, or they remind you of perhaps the kitchen that your great aunt had that you're like, oh my gosh, I've totally been in that kitchen. And I think that there's something that is grounding about that for people. People love a good time capsule, the kind that looks like the lady left the house in 1947 and just never came back. And it's just as it is. And I think the combination of these houses being cheap and being old kind of leads to an interesting study in that it's there. A lot of them are in places where the property values are lower. There might not be as much sort of disposable income for people to be updating their house constantly. So because of that, they have the same kitchen that they had for 70 years. And so they're kind of a window into another time. In a world where you're scrolling and you're constantly seeing things updating, and these are kind of like the befores, and there's something very soothing about that for people.
So I have a practical question for you. I've been on your Instagram feed. I've seen some houses, and I'm thinking about this. I'm like, just the practical process of going through buying a house like this, because it's probably not near my house today. How do I have the support that I need to kind of make that decision if I'm kind of jumping into an old house for the first time? Because sometimes you got to make a decision quick on whether you're buying or not, especially if it is priced at a really interesting price. What do you suggest to buyers who are venturing out?
I think we've heard all the stories of how folks have acquired these houses. Some folks actually get in their car and they make an appointment with the agent. So the first thing is you gotta contact the agent that we list on the post. So you're gonna contact the agent directly. You might be able to have them do a little video tour, or they might be able to give you a little bit more information. So you might want to just kind of contact them, see what this house is about, get a little bit more information, see if it's a project you're worth taking on, and then you're gonna really want to see it. Try to avoid taking on a project that is across the country from you unless you're going to move there.
Or you have family there that can work on it for you. I think you will begin to resent it. And that's a mistake we haven't made yet, but we have nearly made. And I think we've talked ourselves out of it many times.
But when we first bought our fixer upper, I was driving 3 hours away from the family, and I was able to stay with family when I was working on the house initially, but it was like I want to also be home or near the family.
So maybe the fixer-upper isn't the thing that causes you to move across the country. Maybe you just need to expand your circle. So if you live in a metropolitan area, like what towns are within 2 hours of this area that, might have some interesting finds?
Definitely.
Well, and if you can live in the house while you're working on it, that will make your life easier too. If you can at least make 1 or 2 rooms livable and then be able to work on the rest of the house, that will change your situation.
I think another point of support is if the house has enough systems and services that you can get a mortgage. That's, a lot of times these cheap old houses are cash only, or you have to fix them up, and they say bring your contractor. And so I think if you have enough systems and services, that kind of gets you, even if it's $100,000 or under $200,000, you're kind of getting that support to kind of work on the house while you're in it.
Yeah, let's touch on that one more time there, Ethan, because I think that's important. So to qualify for a mortgage, a house has to have certain criteria.
Right. So the house has to have electrical, heating and cooling, or potentially just heating if you're in the Northeast anyway, or in a colder climate. And you need a kitchen and a bathroom. So you need some basic systems to qualify for a mortgage. And if your fixer-upper has those, you can get assistance from the bank, and that kind of gets you in the house so you can work on projects a little slower.
So you might, when you're debating, it's like, hey, do I want the $20,000 one that I'm going to have to pay cash for versus spend a little bit more and find one that I could live in? You might opt to do that.
Right.
Which brings me back, you all have said that we're thinking about the American dream wrong. And I think you're actually pointing to something that, it could be much more accessible. When we think about kind of taking advantage of the cheap old housing stock that people have kind of left and forgotten. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, there's just so much of it. And I do think it takes opening your mind to maybe different locations. But we found in the sort of post-COVID world we live in, where there is so much remote work happening. And, we live in a very sort of rural area, and is a very high percentage of entrepreneurs. So people doing all sorts of things, craftsmen, contractors, they run their own businesses. And so you do have opportunity to move wherever you want to be. And I just think our world, we're feeling a little bit kind of grossed out by, you order something new and it comes to you and it's wrapped in so much styrofoam, and all of that is going into the landfill. And the thing you bought, that took forever to get to you isn't even well made. And I think we live in a very disposable world. And so a lot of people are becoming more and more anxious to sort of get something that's going to outlive you, that you can nurture, that feels worth investing in. I think the idea that instant gratification and you can get everything quickly, I think that's exhausting for people. I think people are overwhelmed. Yes, you can do things instantly, but do you have to do everything instantly all the time? I think the alternative lifestyle we're proposing, which is to slowly and methodically and with intention and with saving money, work on your house, is great permission to throw that philosophy out the window and say, you know what, I'm just going to take my time with this. I think people really want that right now. I think it's exhausting.
I think that for us, we are, I would call us elder millennials. So we were maybe one of the first generations to really go through a digital evolution and to be burnt out by it, and then to want to retire by painting and doing things methodically and slow. I think as the younger generations come up and we are scrolling constantly and just constantly exhausted and being blasted in information in digital, we are going to want more human experiences. And I think that's what this allows us, is the capability for slow, methodical thinking and intentional living with things that are beautiful around us that we want to be surrounded by, instead of just the scroll.
Great. That's great. Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. It was good to catch up.
Great to see you.
Thanks, Angi.
Here's what I'm taking away from my chat with Elizabeth and Ethan today. On the surface, this feels like a conversation about budgets and basements. But it's actually more than that. It's a new way to think about home. It's slow. It's intentional. It's something meant to outlast you. And for a lot of people right now, that feels less like a renovation project and more like a relief. But as it turns out, that philosophy has a business case too. Know where you land on the financial to emotional barometer and be honest about it. Folks that thrive on these projects enjoy the actual work, not just the result. So you need to clear your weekend calendar. The phrase that really stuck with me was actually to consider yourself a steward in a greater timeline, not an owner. That's a real mind shift, and it really makes you rethink how you define home. Thanks for watching Own It. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and give us a review. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use it. No matter what house you live in it like someone's going to be living in it after you. Skip the 5-minute trends. Save the bones. I'll see you next time. This is Angi Hicks with Own It.